Oh, you sound like a choir of 300 people. I'm incredible. Thank you to our musicians, to Rick Fortner, to Mike McCrary on the organ, and wow, how glorious to have music and choral music again after everything that we have been through together. Wow. Well, is it a blessing or a curse? We have to be careful when something happens about what is this? Is this a good thing? Is this not a good thing? Perhaps it's good, perhaps it's not. Because it obviously depends on what happens next. Life is always changing. Everything is always in flux. The story is never over until it's over. And, if you miss your plane, it's a terrible thing, except if the plane ends up crashing, and then it's the best thing that's ever happened to you, right? Conversely, if you win the lottery, it's like, oh, I won the lottery, I won the lottery. And then when you find out that suddenly the money ruins all your relationships with the people you love, and you find yourself miserable, maybe even a year or two later, broken, miserable, you get the idea. The word that I want to share with you this morning, which is a word that, it's a small little word, and yet it has the potential to change how we feel about things and change how we look at things. It's the word yet, Y-E-T, yet. It's a word that acknowledges, hey, I'm not where I want to be, but the story isn't over. We might say, I'm not as strong as I want to be yet. Meaning that I'm still holding out the possibility, Gerald, that I'm going to be stronger one day. A person might think, I don't know much about music or theater or art or the Civil War or whatever yet, because maybe I'm going to decide to study a little bit about it or learn more about it. It's a powerful world. It's not magical thinking, though. I want to be clear. It's not as if after you get to a certain age, I can say, well, I'm not as tall as I want to be yet. Right? That's self-delusion at my age. If anything, I'm starting to shrink a little bit. Even after we come to the point that we can't grow any taller, our hearts can grow wider, our minds can grow broader, our spirits can grow more whole. There are always ways that we can grow. There are so many moments, that I can think of when I wish that I were a better leader or a better father or a better friend. And in those moments, I have to accept that I am who I am with all my faults and my flaws, and it is what it is. But at the same time, I can also remember it's not the end of the story. As long as I have breath, I still have a chance to do more, to do better, to land where I hope to land. It's hard to know how things are going to turn out. In the end, my mistakes as a leader might create new opportunities that would not have existed otherwise, or failing as a parent might become, our failure as a parent might become part of that child's discovery of who they are in the world and what they have to offer. Maybe your parents failing in some way helped you see something in yourself or the world that you wanted to tend to. Bo Lazoff tells a story about a woman who he knew who had a really painful upbringing. Her mother was just not a kind person and really quite abusive, and the woman became a midwife to give other newborns a better start than she had had. With great commitment and deep compassion, she has ushered in many babies into this world. If not for her horrible birth, this fulfilling career may not have ever have occurred to her. We've all been raised and taught by other people. They may have taught us a lot through their wisdom and their example, but I also have to bet that we've learned some things because of their mistakes and their shortcomings. We might say, I never want to do that way when I get older, when I become a parent, or what have you, after having experienced something from a coach or somebody in our lives who's taught us. We learn from people's strengths, and we learn from their weaknesses, and we learn from their mistakes as well. In some ways, knowing about others that their failures can lead to good things sometimes in our lives, it also helps us remember that even our faults, even when we fall, even when we don't do our best, that we don't know what the end of the story is for those who might have been impacted by that change. And that's the key. We have to find a way to live in this tension between accepting who we are in any and every given moment and accepting what our reality is, while also remaining open to the possibility that exists in the future that we might be surprised. We might still be surprised. Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen is a psychiatrist who works with people who've had terminal illness, who are dealing with a terminal illness. And she has a story about a 24-year-old cancer patient who she was seeing, who had one of his legs removed at the hip to save his life. Now, when she began to see him, he was very angry and bitter, and he had a deep sense of injustice and hatred even toward people who were well. It seemed so unfair. How come this happened to him at such a young age? Dr. Remen worked with him around his feelings of rage by using painting and imagery and psychotherapy. After 2 years, he began making small shifts. He started to go out and visit other patients who themselves were suffering severe physical losses. Once he visited a woman who was about his age. It was a hot day. He was wearing running shorts, so his artificial leg showed as he entered the hospital room. The woman was so depressed about the loss of her breasts that she wouldn't even look at him. Wouldn't even pay attention to him. The nurses had left the radio playing, probably to try to cheer her up. He was so desperate to get her attention that he unstrapped his leg and he began dancing around the room on one leg, snapping his fingers to the music. She looked at him in amazement and then burst out laughing and said, "Man, if you can dance, I can sing." After he told Dr. Remen the story, she took out some of the drawings that he had made over the years. One was of a vase with a big dark crack in it. She had asked him to draw a picture of his body, and this is what he drew. It seemed to him that this vase could never function as a vase again. This time, 2 years later, when he looked at it, he said, "Oh, this one isn't finished." And he proceeded to pick up a yellow crayon, and putting his finger on the crack, he said, "You see here where it's broken? This is where the light comes through." And with the yellow crayon, he drew light rays streaming from the crack in his body. I want to invite you to try using the word yet at the end of sentences whenever you can. You might say to yourself, I haven't fallen in love or haven't felt I've been loved the way I want to yet. You might say that I haven't been able to stay sober yet. Or my child or spouse or coworker hasn't been able to kick their bad habit yet. Can you feel how different it is when you add those three little words at the end of the sentence? It opens possibility. I have not completely healed from that traumatic experience yet. I haven't gotten my book or my article or my poem or my photograph or my cartoon published yet. It's not about being disingenuous about the present or fooling ourselves. It's about accepting what is, but keeping our hearts and our minds open to the fact that everything is always changing. And there's reason to believe that especially if we apply ourselves, if we care, if we put our hearts behind it, that things can get better. After 2 years of a pandemic and all the confusion and isolation and illness and death and the fear and the misinformation that we've all experienced, it's important that we're able to honor what's real today, how hard it's been, the losses we've sustained, the ways we've been and remain in many ways disconnected, while also remembering that tomorrow will be another day. And the story is not finished, and I truly believe that the best is yet to come. The piece of music that you're about to hear from our choir was commissioned for the organist and for the adult choir in 1984, and it lifts up the words of our blessed covenant, which begins with love. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. I love you. Amen.